Pageants and platforms. Candidates for the various pageants, Miss America, Miss USA, and so forth, all have platforms. We know that. But have you ever wondered where that platform comes from and how do they go about supporting that platform? The reigning USOA Mrs. Pennsylvania, Rebecca West Hensinger, joins us to talk about her platform, her journey, and what her plans for the future are. That's all coming up right here, right now. I'm Sam Chen, and this is Face the Issues. Good evening and welcome to Face the Issues. I'm Sam Chen. All of us have seen a pageant at some time. Miss America, Miss USA, Mrs. America, and we all know about the platforms. But where do these platforms come from? And how do the candidates then go about talking about their platforms, supporting their platforms, and what happens after their year is over? Joining us today is the reigning USOA Mrs. Pennsylvania, Rebecca West Hensinger, to talk about her platform and her journey. Rebecca, welcome to Face the Issues.
Hi, Sam. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
It is our pleasure. We are grateful that you joined us. Before we get started, let's just run through the titles that you do hold. Right now, you are the reigning USOA Mrs. Pennsylvania, and you were second runner-up at the USOA Mrs. Pageant. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
This is not the first time, though, right? So in 2019, you were Mrs. Pennsylvania America. We'll get into the difference here in a little bit. You won a number of awards, the State Fitness Award, Scholarship Award, Congeniality Award. You were the top 15 at Mrs. America. And you've also competed as Mrs. Denmark at the Mrs. World pageant, where you finished in the top 15 there. So this is not foreign territory for you. You've been there, you've done it all. First, congratulations, and congratulations on your current title.
Thank you so much.
Let me just start by asking you about your journey. How did you get into pageants? Is this something, we always hear about young girls whose parents start them early, and then there are those who stumble into it in many ways. What was that like for you?
Yes, and it's what you pointed out is so true. So a lot of times when people think about pageantry, they think of maybe the TV show Toddlers and Tiaras with the great big crowns and the little girls who almost look even too small for their big dresses. But what some people might not know, and even your viewers out there, is that there is a whole realm of pageantry for women of any age at any stage in their life. So when I was 30 years old, and just for reference, I'm 40 now, so 10 years ago, I was involved in some community theater. And the show that I was in was not very well attended, unfortunately. So when I looked out to the audience, to the just handful of people out there, I saw a woman dressed in a beautiful pantsuit with a sash and a sparkly crown. And I didn't stay in character most of this play because I was just looking at her wondering, who is this? She's a full-grown woman. She's not this little kid. Who is she? Why is she here? And why is she giving off like this vibe that she's just so professional and confident and put together? And I thought of myself in that role. And 10 years ago, I couldn't see myself in that role. But one day, 4 years ago, I actually woke up one November morning in 2018, and I thought to myself, I think I want to do this. And I really can't explain to you why it was that particular morning. I think I was just at a really good point in my life where, my marriage was very healthy, my kids were a little bit older, and everything was just coming together, and I thought, why not try on something new?
So you had not run for Miss Pennsylvania or Miss America or Miss USA in the past?
No, never. I went in the Mrs. division completely inexperienced. I was the rookie.
And now you're the expert.
I don't know. Now I definitely have that experience, and it just goes to show you can't let inexperience hold you back from trying something new, because you may end up really loving it, and it may end up becoming a big part of who you are. And pageantry is a big part of who I am.
That's great advice. Rebecca, let me ask you this. we mentioned two different titles you've held. Currently, it's USOA Mrs. Pennsylvania. In 2019, you were Mrs. Pennsylvania America. And for those who follow pageants, they know the same thing is true in the Miss division. There is a Miss America and a Miss USA.
That's right.
What are these different organizations or just different divisions? Can you walk us through what we're hearing when we hear these different titles?
Absolutely. It is a little bit confusing if you're not sure. So Miss USA is not a scholarship. It's a competition. And it's extremely hard to win. It's for women who are under 26 years of age, never been married, have never had children. And that's Miss USA. And then Miss America, they're not even calling it a pageant anymore. Times have really changed in the realm of pageantry. Now they're calling it a competition. So they've let go of the swimsuit competition. They've actually even let go of the evening gown.
Okay.
So you don't even see a gown anymore. Okay. It's actually more, seems like a political debate. There's a lot of public speaking and there's a talent portion. Whereas at Miss USA, there is no talent. It's more of like a modeling competition.
Okay.
So very, very different. It attracts a completely different sect of women.
Okay. At the Mrs. divisions and levels, same thing, same difference, or is there?
You know, for the Mrs. division, there is no talent.
Okay.
Because being a wife, and a lot of us are mothers, being a wife and a mother is talent enough.
It is. It is.
And taking
well
care.
said.
Yes, it's so true. And taking care of household and having a career, and then also being involved in your community. To me, that's a great talent, and balancing all of that. So there are several different organizations for married women. I started out in the Mrs. America pageant, and now I've moved towards United States of America's Mrs. And I had a wonderful time.
So just spitballing here, there could be a competition, talent competition, where your kids come out and the best kid therefore wins the war. And I've seen you talk about your kid on social media. I think you would win. I think if they did this, you would win.
Yes. Oh my gosh. My son and my two stepchildren, they're extremely talented, really well-rounded kids. And I also think it's so cool that they get to come cheer me on at things. They get to sit in the audience and see me grow and challenge myself, and even sometimes win. And then the other side of it is, you know, I get to be the baseball mom, the swim mom, cheering them on. So it's really a great picture there. Yeah,
that's a really neat aspect I think most people don't see on TV, but that's a really neat aspect of it. Let me ask you this: you've done pageants now for 3 years, going on 4 years. You hold a title right now. You're the reigning USOA Mrs. Pennsylvania, but you also have work, and I imagine most people in the Mrs. category, they work outside or they have other things in their life. And for you, you're a fitness instructor. We'll get into this a little bit later. You have done incredible things. You've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. And so what's the day job, and how do you balance all that with your responsibilities?
That's a great question. Actually, it's a question they ask you in pageant interview so often, because it's really important. How do you balance everything? But I think when something's really important to you, you prioritize that thing. And I like to write things in pen on my calendar. If I write it in pencil, then I know that it can be moved around a little bit, you know? But if something's in pen, then it's permanent. So you have to be highly organized to kind of juggle all of these things and make sure that there's no weak spots. Like I always want to make sure I'm not too busy for my kids, or I'm not doing too many pageant appearances, or maybe I'm not doing enough. So it is that kind of fragile, delicate balance, but I think I've gotten really good at it over the years. But during the day, I am a fitness instructor. I teach spin, which means basically I yell at people in the dark who are riding a bike that goes nowhere. It's highly satisfying. I used to only teach 2 days a week. Now I've bumped it up to 3. My classes used to be 60 minutes. Now I teach a 90-minute every other Friday. So I get a lot out of it. I'm also a custom cookie artist. So I'd like to say that one cancels out the other. You know, you bake the cookies, you ride the bike, everything kind of works.
Do the people in your class then get to eat the cookies?
Sometimes, sometimes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Rebecca, let me ask you this. There's a young Navy officer named Kelly Sprochi, and she has become somewhat of a viral Instagram sensation for advocating what she calls do both. The idea that she's a naval officer, but she also competes in Miss America, Miss USA pageants. And the idea that yes, you can do both, but it does require prioritization, as you say. Kelly is in her 20s. You've been through those years. You now have a family. She just got married. You have kids. Can you do both?
You can absolutely do both. And I love that. In fact, I need to get her name from you later. I love that. Do both. And something you touched on there that I also feel strongly about is that a stereotype can't define you. So she's in the Navy. Most people wouldn't necessarily envision her on the Miss America stage, or vice versa.
Right.
I love that. And for women in the Mrs. Pageantry realm who are married, maybe some of us have children, day jobs, we're all in. Whereas women in the Miss division, or maybe the younger kids, like you said, their parents sign them up, or maybe they're doing Miss America to get a scholarship, we're all in on our own financially. So we must prioritize it. We wouldn't take that foot into the door unless we weren't really serious about it. So the Mrs. division, we are all in.
Last question for you in this segment, Rebecca. That you mentioned earlier the stereotype, and this is what Kelly talks about, the fact that they say, well, in the military you can't also be girly and compete, is exactly the way she puts it. And then as she competes, people get shocked that she's a naval officer. There is a stereotype when it comes to pageantry. Does that bother you at all? And what do you say to people who ask you or who place that stereotype on you?
Oh, I just want to prove them wrong. And I'm not the only one. There are so many women in pageantry today who just want to shatter that glass ceiling and then kind of dance all over that broken glass. It's so true, and have no fear of what people are thinking about you, because what someone else thinks about you is really none of your business. You can't control that. I love the idea of breaking a stereotype. And I think today, if you look at Mrs. America or Miss America, women today are so different from 20, 30, 40 years ago. We want a woman who is multifaceted, not somebody who can necessarily do it all, because maybe that's not realistic. You can't do everything that you want to do. But someone who is multifaceted, really polished under pressure, and has like a go-get-it attitude. And that's what you see amongst all of the winners across divisions. Those are the things that kind of bind them together, no matter what the system is.
Great advice. I like that. We're going to go to the break. When we come back, we'll talk about your platform and your journey and how you got there.
Great.
So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Face the Issues is produced and recorded in the studios of Lighthouse TV. Positively different.
Welcome back to Face the Issues. Rebecca, thank you again for being here. I want to move now to talk about your platform. And everybody who has ever watched a pageant knows that contestants have to have a platform. And for everyone, it's different. And it's something that they choose. And it usually has some meaning. So can you tell us about your platform?
Yes, so your platform, like you said, is something that you can choose at your own free will. Sometimes girls will kind of weave it into the work that they do. Sometimes girls will weave it into maybe community service that they've done. But for me, when I thought about it, I thought, what's an issue that just breaks my heart and is meaningful to me? And the one thing that I could think of was substance use disorder and addiction, which is a huge topic today. It's the #1 killer of Americans. We've surpassed cancer, suicide, car accidents. It's #1. So that means that everyone knows someone. And when I think of the things that I've gone through in my life, especially from an early age, having 2 parents who have both recovered from substance use disorder, it's a huge part of who I am. And very early on in my youth, my dad had really candid conversations with me about drugs and alcohol, about his past, about what I may be faced with genetically one day. And those really honest conversations have directed the path in my life. And my goal is just to inspire parents to have those conversations with their kids because it's so important. It could be saving their life.
You use the term substance use disorder. We often hear about substance abuse, and I think when we hear about it, and our viewers will know, we've had a number of people on the show tell their stories, and generally we think of the drunk alcoholic who is constantly drinking and beating their spouse or driving cars into trees, or we think about the drug addict who is constantly shooting up. But there's another side of substance use as opposed to a complete abuse of it, right?
Yeah, substance use disorder is, the verbiage has actually changed over the years. No longer do we refer to it as substance abuse disorder because it kind of suggests that the person maybe made a decision to be addicted to drugs. Everybody has that first decision that they make to start. That's usually just on the person. But for somebody who has those qualities that will just make them more susceptible to addiction, we're really kind of embracing that new terminology now where it's substance use disorder. And like you said, when we think of somebody who suffers from addiction, you think of maybe somebody drinking from a paper bag, or somebody like a heroin user who lives on the streets. Well, guess what? I very much suffered from substance use disorder ever since I was 19 years old. Alcohol, namely, and it takes a lot to come out and say that. And I've actually had coaches, pageant coaches, really well-known pageant coaches in the past who have told me, don't sit down in interviews and talk about your parents' struggle with substances because it may make them think that you're not fit for the job of Mrs. America. Well, guess what? All of that is part of who I am. It's part of my family's past. But that right there is stigma.
Absolutely.
And stigma is the killer. When people feel like they can't talk about their struggles, that's when we really get into trouble. So somebody like me who's in a little bit of like a public position, just kind of skirting around that issue that has made me who I am, that's very dishonest and that is stigmatizing. And that's, as a nation, is what we need to move past.
And so this is personal for you in the sense that this has been your story, but also as you work with young people and with parents to have them have these conversations, that's part of your story too. You've been told not to have this conversation. And so on both ends, this is very, very personal for you.
It really is. And a lot of parents have asked me, well, I've used drugs and alcohol. If I talk to my kids about why they shouldn't, doesn't that make me a hypocrite? And if I talk to my kids about this subject, won't it put the idea in their heads that maybe if mom or dad use these things, that maybe it's a rite of passage for me to as well? And it's completely wrong. There is no perfect way to do one thing. There's no perfect way to have that conversation with your kids. The most important thing is that you just do it. You don't need a script or a narrative. You just be honest and you do it. But you have to be comfortable with yourself to do that. And so I really invite parents to even just get the ball rolling in their heads and think about that conversation.
How, when you talk to parents and you use your platform, what do you tell them to say? How do you advise them to have these conversations or even begin these conversations?
Well, first of all, I tell them, I myself have suffered from addiction, not just my family, but myself as a woman and as a mom. I've suffered greatly, and I'm coming up on a year of sobriety from alcohol, and it's the most important thing to the world to me. And I just want to share it and talk about it and show everyone that you don't have to be a perfect parent to inspire your kids to make healthy decisions. Nobody is perfect. No parent is perfect. I just tell them, take a time, like when you're in the car. Everybody has a commute to school or work, or you're running errands. Use that time. Kind of organically carve out those times with your children and just say, hey, did you ever notice this in a movie? Or did you ever notice, grandma or an aunt or an uncle or a neighbor who maybe drinks too much. Or in my case, hey kids, did you remember when mom drank too much and made a fool out of herself and you were scared? Let's talk about that.
One of the things you mentioned was carving out time. There's an intentionality to this, where this is not something that you can just haphazardly expect to happen, that you need to be intentional about.
I mean, yes and no. If you really just start thinking about it and realizing how important that conversation is, and that statistically, kids who have that conversation with their parents are 50% less likely to pick up drugs and alcohol.
Wow.
At some point, they're gonna be faced with that decision.
Sure.
No matter what school they go to,
Right.
no matter what neighborhood they grow up in, there is no way that we can attach a certain demographic to addiction and substance use. There is none. You know, we've tried to make a tie to race, gender, education, income level. There is none.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be so intentional about it. You just have to do it. Even take like a movie or a TV show that you're watching and have that be kind of, you know, the way to get the ball rolling.
That's the other thing that was intriguing about what you said, and I really like the point that you made here, that our young people are confronted with these ideas everywhere they go.
Oh, yes.
In movies, in school, from friends, from others. There's almost this, I don't know if it's a misconception or if it's more of a bury your head in the sand approach of, if we never bring it up, they will never hear of it. But I would venture to say that most young people are familiar with what is available to them.
Oh, yes. And so much younger than we would actually think. You know, even just driving down the street, a new dispensary just opened up, and the kids ask, what is that? You know, they see it everywhere. And as a sober woman, in the beginning of my sobriety, I thought to myself, wow, alcohol is everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, we celebrate so many amazing things in life with a substance that essentially can kill us.
Yeah.
Why is that? And I really had, you know, I started to wonder about those things. And I did feel like I was surrounded by alcohol. But then I kind of turned the page on that a little bit, and I also realized I'm actually not. It's just what I'm noticing and looking out for. And now, almost a year into my sobriety, I'm seeing that there are so many more ways to celebrate life and feel fun, you know, and cut loose. It just depends on what you're looking for and what you're looking at.
That's fantastic advice. Rebecca, we're going to go to break. When we come back, I want to talk to you a little about what you are looking toward in the future, and also the role that faith has played in all of this.
Would love that.
Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Face the Issues. Rebecca, closing out, one of the things that you talk a lot about, and anyone that follows you on social media knows this, is your faith. And that this journey, whether it's with substance use or your pageantry journey or where your platform is now and where you hope to take in the future, you've always attributed a lot of this to your faith. What role has faith played in your life?
You know, I think that faith in my relationship with Christ it's an embrace. It's the biggest embrace that just never ends. And when you feel like you're loved unconditionally, you feel like there's nothing that you can't do. I'm not afraid to step into a life alcohol-free and talk about it freely. I'm not afraid to step out onto a pageant stage in a swimsuit at age 38 with zero experience, because I know that God is watching over me, watching out for me, directing my path, and any kind of hardship that's placed in front of me is intentional. And it's something that I need to learn from. And I think that God knows that sometimes I need a roadblock. And I appreciate those roadblocks. You know, Christ has me looking at things in a way where I always understand that I'm so well taken care of and that I'm so well loved, and that my work is just, you know, to think like Jesus and think about helping other people, especially, you know, people who aren't as lucky as me, too. And in our community, there's certainly no shortage of that, sadly. But it's just that big embrace. And it's so comforting. And it's so life-changing too. And especially in my sobriety journey, just leaning on God and realizing that not everything that is so hard for me is 100% mine to take on. I can give some of that to God. He wants me to. He knows my innermost feelings. He knows what I'm gonna say before I even say it, or what I'll do before I do it. He understands, and I give a lot of that to him.
And so you talk about the embrace and the comfort as you're talking about roadblocks. And it's not usually things that we hear people put together. And yet, in your journey and your faith, they are. Last question, your future. Obviously, you are a reigning Mrs. Pennsylvania. You've been here before. We said earlier, you climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. You've talked about potentially going for Everest. What does the future hold for Rebecca?
You know, you hit it. That's exactly it. So when I pass the crown on in September, and I will recompete, I'll be competing again. I won't talk about that just yet. But we do have our sights set on climbing the 7 summits of the world. So the 7 tallest mountains, 1 down and 6 to go. So stay tuned. We're really excited for that.
That would be neat. We'll have to have you back just to talk about that.
Oh, I would love that. I would love that.
Rebecca, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your faith and your journey with us. It's been an honor, and we look forward to having you back.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate it.
That is our show for tonight. I want to thank Rebecca West Hensinger for joining us, for sharing her story and how she's using it to inspire so many others. And of course, I want to thank each of you for tuning in. We hope you'll tune back in right here next week. My name is Sam Chen. On behalf of all of us here at Face the Issues, thank you and good night.